Hey, deserving listeners, it's time for me to react to your comments from my videos from last week. Let's get to it. Love in Paradise. I started reacting to that on Discovery Plus, and patron Tessa actually emailed in using our website and said, I just finished the first Love in Paradise video, and you left me hanging. You never finished the story about the horse that you were on that ran off. How did you get off the horse when you were 13 at that ranch in Montana? Yeah, I didn't realize I left people hanging. So, long story short, when I was 13, I rode a horse for the first time. This is many acres, and there wasn't a lot of oversight, and they just put me on a horse, and I had the fast horse that liked to run, and it just ran off, and I had no idea what I was doing. And I often think about this as an analogy for a lot of things that we're out of control about, because I was terrified. First I was giddy. I was like, whoa, this feels so amazing to be on a horse that's just like, powerfully just taking off into the wilderness. And then I thought, wait, what if we run into something? And there was this tree stump up ahead, and we were headed right toward it. And I thought, well, this is how I die. I crash into a tree stump because I didn't ask enough questions about how to steer a horse. And then the horse went around the tree stump because the horse is a intelligent creature and knows not to run straight into a tree stump. And I will use this analogy when I'm thinking and when I'm talking with my clients about when you are trying to get your attachment needs met. Preoccupied people, and avoidant people to some extent as well, when we're attachment anxious and we don't trust other people, we'll try to manage other people because we don't believe that the other person can move around the stump on their own, meaning that when you feel hurt, we will tell people, hey, stop doing that thing to me, instead of when you did that, it's fine, you didn't mean it this way, but it hurt my feelings. That's allowing your partner to, it's giving them the information, it's showing them the stump, it's taking the blinders off of their eyes, and then they can go, oh, I didn't want it. In their head, they're like, ooh, I hurt my partner. I don't want to hurt my partner. I need to adjust my behavior because I don't want to hurt them. But we don't give people the opportunity to do that often. We don't tell them, you hurt me. We don't tell them, hey, you made me scared, without being super accusatory, which provokes defenses from the other person. We might even not say anything because we don't trust them. So when everything's working well, two people trust each other, they tell each other their primary emotions without accusation, and maybe tentatively, things like, I don't know, maybe I'm weird, but when you did that thing yesterday, it hurt my feelings. And, I know you love me, and I just thought I'd tell you that. If I hurt your feelings, I would hope you'd tell me. This is allowing the other person, giving them a chance to rise to the occasion. And what a wonderful thing when that happens, But all of our ways of trying to manage and, grab the reins and, steer the horse, we all, crash into the thing. So, but your question is, patron Tessa, is what happened in the end? Well, what happened in the end was the horse went around the stump, and then the horse kind of calmed down, and then the rest of the horses, and everyone else caught up, and then we went up into the mountains that were near the ranch, and it was exhilarating. So it doesn't really end interestingly. Darcy and Stacy posted a video, me reacting to an interview on Entertainment Tonight. Alicia on YouTube says, if anyone was love bombing, it was Darcy. She overwhelmed Georgie with trips, expensive clothes, talks about marriage, etc. Yeah, that's true. I don't think either one of them were love bombing the other person. I guess maybe you could argue that Darcy was. But yeah, Darcy was saying that Georgie love bombed her. And it's like, huh? Maybe he did, but we certainly didn't see any evidence of that. The Ingrid says, I don't think Darcy has any sense of self-reflection. I doubt she even watches her own season. Yeah, it's interesting to think about. We don't know if she watches her season, but it would be interesting to think about cast members, and I know many of them do watch their own show, their own scenes, and how illuminating it could be, how much you could learn. And, I would do this not very often, but with some couples and families, I would have them record themselves having a fight or something, and then listen back to it. We always use this as a jumping off point. Think about yourself. The next time you're in a fight, and if you find yourself having a lot of habitual fights. By the way, I shaved all of my whiskers because I'm being Napoleon Dynamite for Halloween this weekend, and Napoleon has a hard time growing facial hair, and so I feel weird, and I feel like I look weird. Anyway, so what was I talking about? Oh yeah. Record yourself. If you have habitual conflict and you're having a hard time changing it, one thing that's interesting to do is to record it. And when you listen back to it, mainly focus on yourself, because that's what you can change. And listen to your tone of voice. Listen to the word choices you're using. Listen to what you didn't say, what you could have said but didn't say. It can be highly illuminating, because, when we're in conflict, we're triggered, and we think that we're rational, but we're often wildly not rational. And if we imagine, I sometimes wonder if all of us were forced to listen to the first, 100 fights we get into, that conflict would get cut in half, because every time we get into a fight, we enter into that space thinking, well, I've always been the rational one. Whereas if you listen to yourself, you will realize, oh my goodness, not only was I irrational and, saying bad things, or I had a bad tone or something, but I was mostly to blame. It's mostly my fault. Imagine having that wisdom as you head into the next conflict. Anyway, now some people beat themselves up too much, and recording themselves might add to that. So, case by case. Anyway. Sammy says, and trauma bonding is also often used incorrectly too. Right. So I was talking about how gaslighting is misused. Codependency is massively used wrong. Gaslighting and love bombing. By the way, codependency, I'm going to publish. I'm working on a deep dive on codependency. It's just for patrons of the podcast. It's amazing. I mean, I don't know if the episode is amazing, but it was amazing for me to do a deep dive on it. I looked up all the research, not all the research, but a lot of it. I gave it a lot of thought. I thought about people I know, clients who exhibit codependency, and I landed on an area that I feel pretty good about. I mean, I don't know how things will go, but, and by the way, if you want to listen to the episode and then email me your own accounts of codependency, you can go to the website and in the subject line say follow up to codependency, and I'm going to do a follow-up episode to codependency. Anyway, so yeah, trauma bonding is another word that is often misused. I've talked about it before on the podcast. Traditionally, what it means is when one essentially has Stockholm syndrome and you will bond with your abuser. The victim will bond with the abuser. But what people are using it for right now is when two people, both having been traumatized, will bond over the fact that they are both trauma survivors. Which makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, when you think of, I bet you anything if you said to people who didn't know, what do you think trauma bonding means? I bet you most people would think it's the latter definition. So, I kind of get it as to why people would misuse the term. But if you're used to the term being used in the other way, it feels bad. And it's just like, well, why do we have to, co-opt that word? Why can't we just, create a new phrase like victim bonding or survivor bonding or something? Anyway. Darcy and Stacy Bears All episode. I've been getting into the Bears All show. It's been interesting to watch Bears All, actually, because sometimes we get deeper information from the cast members, and sometimes we just have like a fun time with them, which somehow just makes me feel better. Haley says, it's unfortunate that there's such a gender divide when it comes to hygiene and grooming. Right. So in the episode with Darcy and Stacy, there was a flashback to Tom, and he was man grooming. It's unfortunate that there's such a gender divide when it comes to hygiene and grooming. If men want to shave, get manicures, use feminine body wash, etc., let them. Who cares? Yeah, who cares? Who cares? Everyone can do whatever they want to their own body, right? And this weird, I don't know, I feel like as a society, we've woken up to so many oppressive and regressive and harmful attitudes. And we're moving forward as a society, but there's still like these lingering things. Like there's a lot of body shaming that goes on with all politicians, obviously, of any gender, but men politicians, there's a fair amount of body shaming that I think it's not going to age well. If you hate a politician, then fine. If you think that they vote badly, if they have bad things to say, then say, I don't like what they said. I don't like the way they voted. I don't like that legislation that they backed. Say that. But to shame their body, to shame their hair, to shame the way that they look, it's not okay. It's not okay when we do it to someone who is traditionally seen as a victim of that kind of shaming, and it's not okay to do it to anyway. So yeah, who cares? Someone wants to a dude wants to have man grooming, that's fine. Deanna says, I have no idea why there is such a gender divide. For me, it's hygiene and self-care. My fiance now follows a morning and night skin regimen, and he loves it. He was also told that this was too feminine and men shouldn't care about those girly things. But now he's putting in effort and care into himself. Yeah, good for him. I mean, it's fine. If you don't want to do that, regardless of gender, that's fine as well. But if you want to do it, it's totally fine. Why do we care? Why? I mean, I'm guessing in 100 years, they're going to look back and go like, so in the year 2021, you had some sort of social rule about like certain genders could spend time on skincare and other genders couldn't. Why? It's like everyone has skin, and some people like to be healthier, they like to look well, or anyway. Yeah, when you see The Matrix, it's illogical and ridiculous. It's like our culture is ridiculous in so many ways, and and that's just one of the thousands of ways. Irai says, Dr. Honda, send Darcy a playlist with all the videos you've done on her and attach a bill for 100 hours of mental health services. Yeah, no, I couldn't do that, of course. You're joking. It is interesting, though, and I talked about it in the video, how many hours I have watched of hers, of her stuff, and how much time I've spent thinking about her. Yeah. V says, my ex had cameras in his house. Right, so we were learning that Jesse had a security camera in his house. V says, my ex had cameras in his house. He did not tell me. I found out after I left him that he had all sorts of footage of me. Yikes. Yeah. I mean, that doesn't seem to be the case with Jesse. At least what my impression was, that he didn't hide the video camera from her. But yeah. Now, why would someone do that? Well, one is to control. Another is paranoia. There's a lot of people out there with a lot of fear. And, fear of crime, or even fear of their spouse cheating. It's a common enough phenomenon to mention that, and it's mildly stalking and obviously immoral to invade someone else's privacy, like hacking into your spouse's phone or attaching some kind of spy device on their car or on their computer, putting a hidden camera to watch what they're doing and to monitor what your spouse is doing. Sometimes this is motivated by attachment insecurity, and they believe their only way to attain attachment security is to monitor like that. It's born from jealousy and worries of abandonment. Obviously, it's immoral. I get where it comes from, but it's not okay. And obviously, there's other people that are psychopaths, but that's rare. Corey and Evelyn, the soup episode. Yikes. Anonymous patron emailed in. She says, what if Evelyn isn't ambivalent about Corey? She seems terrified of closeness, of being hurt, and of getting lost in a relationship. Yeah. Patriarchal systems can make it difficult for women to maintain an identity in the best of circumstances with marriage. Yeah. I think she's also worried about how she's going to protect herself from hurt in a serious long-term relationship. Yeah. And I think she really wants to be with him, or she would have done so, or she wouldn't have done so to be able to stay in the same country, even if she's not quite ready to be the corn. Thoughts. Yeah. So Donna's patron is like, Evelyn isn't ready to be the corn, anyway. So yeah, for sure. I think that's a good possibility that, and the more vulnerability that we see from Evelyn, the more it looks like Evelyn really does have a soft spot for Corey. It doesn't, a lot of times this doesn't look that way. And that maybe there's, so there's a deep part of her that loves Corey and wants to spend the rest of her life with him. And there's, some evidence along those lines, not really verbal from her, but behavioral, that she did marry him and she's been with him. She could have broke up with him and stayed broken up with him. But maybe the reason why she is, hesitant and afraid of going with her gut and marrying him is because of the patriarchy will eliminate her identity. Maybe in Ecuador, it's particularly bad. I don't know. But certainly in the United States, that can happen as well. That there'll be an expectation from the man, the husband, or from society that now it's all about having kids and staying home, and serving your husband and not having your own dreams, that sort of thing. And, Evelyn said, I've had my own dreams my whole life, and I've never really wanted to get married because of that, maybe. So, yeah, absolutely. However, you can talk, if you're Evelyn, you can talk about that and be like, hey, I'm ambivalent. You don't have to be a jerkface about it. Feathered says, I've never seen Evelyn look so happy as she did humiliating Corey with the soup. Probably not a good sign for the relationship. Yeah, there's a eerie pleasure that seems to cross Evelyn's face, along with Summit's mom's face, by the way, while, someone's being humiliated. And I don't know what to make of it. We can't know what's going on inside of Evelyn's mind. My dogs are going berserk. I guess there's a delivery of some kind. Marie says, Corey needs to channel 10% of Andre's energy. Yeah. Corey needs a little bit of Andre's energy. Or Solia says, maybe now that Corey cheated on Evelyn, she feels ashamed that now the town will call her that bad name because now she was cheated on. And that is why suddenly we see this aggressive behavior from Evelyn and her sisters. Total speculation. Yeah, it's interesting to think about this town that they're in. People from Ecuador will comment or email and say, oh, no, people in Ecuador, or people who've traveled to Ecuador will say, no, people in Ecuador are really nice, nicest people on the planet, which I don't doubt. However, there seems to be something in this town, or maybe the friend group in this town that Evelyn is in, because Evelyn, the two sisters, Raul, and then the dudes on the beach from last season, there seems to be something going on there. I don't know what it is. Obviously, we can't tell from a reality TV show. But at least what we're being presented is I don't know what to call it, like just a teenage bullying tendency that seems to be born out of insecurity or something. You're a dude on the beach and you learn that this American guy was cheated on. One, you would think you'd be like, well, what do I care? That's between them. Or two, you'd be like, oh, that sounds like a rough time. I don't like being cheated on. That sounds bad. But their reaction was to gang up and ridicule him for being a victim of infidelity and to laugh about him in open spaces. Everyone knows, oh, there goes that guy. And they called him whatever word they called him. Like, okay, if you're 13, but those dudes look like they were in their 20s, like, huh? Now, are normal 25-year-old dudes in Seattle prone to that kind of behavior? Yeah, I guess so. If there's a particular toxic masculinity, insecurity thing that's happening. Anyway, who knows? But what Orsolia is saying, and I'm guessing I'm wrong. I'm guessing that this town is totally fine and normal and nice. And I'm guessing even that Evelyn's friends are totally normal and nice, but we're just being presented with a certain thing. Anyway, but Orsolia says, if that's true, that there's something kind of odd about this friend group or this town, that maybe now that Evelyn got cheated on, she's terrified of, oh my goodness, now I'm going to be a victim of that bullying that happens. And maybe that's where some of her, behavior comes from. Could be. The next episode that I reacted to, in which we met Jenny, Racherina says, the reason why Evelyn is bent out of shape is because she didn't think Corey was going to find someone this fast. Her ego was shaken, yet she doesn't take any responsibility. I have no sympathy for her or for Corey. He doesn't have any spine. Yeah, I've seen a lot of comments like this where people are really hacking on Corey, that, he doesn't have a spine. And I can't relate to that. I can relate to people being defensive or being upset at Evelyn for being mean to Corey, because, none of us, it's hard to watch people being mean to someone else. It just doesn't seem fair, right? But people seem to really hate Corey for putting up with it. And yeah, I mean, is it some kind of projective identification? Some kind of like, maybe some of us have been victimized by, spouses, partners, and we see ourselves in Corey, and so we attack Corey or something. I mean, when I see Corey, and if I'm perceiving it right, which who knows, as being overly nice and lacking self-respect, I just feel bad for him. And I'm a nice person, I would like to think. And, I've put up with bad behavior in the past. And I would hate it if, as I'm going through that, and I was on a reality TV show for some reason, I would hate it if people were yelling at me. I'm like, well, I'm just trying to make this thing work. I'm in love, and I want to, anyway. So let me know what you think in the comments. I'm a little confused as to why people hate Corey. Now, maybe that's the reason why you watch these kinds of shows, is because you get to hate everybody. I don't know. Now, if you could make an argument that Corey irks you in some way, but people are attacking him and they're calling him all sorts of names. They're basically acting like those guys on the beach who are, I'm not going to repeat the names. They're really quite despicable kinds of insults that are waged always against men in situations like this. And I just don't really get it. I don't get it when the guys on the beach did it. I don't get it why people do it online. I could see people being frustrated, like, Corey, come on, dude, like, grow a spine. Like, I could see that. But the attacking, the insults that happen, I don't understand that. Yo, good old Yo says, Dr. Honda, can you analyze more about Corey? Why does he put up with this? I can't even believe he's sitting down with Raul and talking like they're friends again, like he doesn't have any self-respect. Corey is more mysterious than Evelyn, I think. Yeah. Okay. Well, so let's break it down. Why is Corey Corey? Well, there are two possibilities. One is that he has a problem, and the other possibility is that he doesn't have a problem. So let's explore the possible problems that could result in him putting up with behavior from Evelyn that anyone else would say, I don't want to deal with this anymore. He might have been treated badly in the past growing up, and he sees this behavior as normal. Certainly there's a lot of people like that. He doesn't believe anyone else will love him and thinks, well, this is the best I can do. Maybe he needs to overfunction and be codependent. So as I was saying, I did a whole deep dive on codependency, and one of the features of codependency is this deep need to take care of someone who has some kind of problem, whether it's addiction or an impulse control problem or personality disorder. And you need, as a codependent person, to be connected to someone like that, and you need to be trying to help them. And it's an avoidance of your own issues. It's a desperation to get attachment. You think that's your only worth. You think that's the only worth you have, is when you are connected to someone that has like a very, very big personality problem and you're trying to help them with that. That's a candidate. And again, listen to my whole deep dive that's coming out soon. And think about Corey. It's hard to know because they never give us any history about these people. So, I mean, his parents seem perfectly fine, but we all know that means nothing. Like Evelyn's parents seem like super nice, but obviously something went wrong, right? Or like Alina, Corey doesn't have experience with love and doesn't have anything to compare it to, and is in his first love. And, a lot of us will put up with some atrocious situations in our first love because it can be so intense. So that's, the brainstormed possible problems that could result. But I don't really, any one of those could be true and all of them could be not true. I don't have anything to go off of. Plus, I don't know if it's the second possibility, which is he doesn't actually have a problem, that he's just in love and he's a nice guy. If you fall in love with someone, because we don't see the good sides of Evelyn, they don't show us the good side, or very often anyway. So you could imagine that they have a lot of good times together and they're very sweet together and they have a lot of intimacy and a lot of things in common. And he's just a really nice guy, and he sees her behavior for what it is. I have people in my personal life, and I have clients where there will be one partner that will have, very erratic moods and behaviors and could be very mean sometimes. But their partner, either through therapy or just because they see it for what, they don't take it personally. And when the Coreys look at the Evelyns of the world, they're like, well, I'm not going to take it personally. She has issues, and I recognize that, and I'm okay with that. And, take the good with the bad. And it doesn't hurt me as much as it might hurt someone else because I see it for what it is. So, I don't know. I could see that's a pretty strong possibility because there's some signs that is true. For some of you out there who have a personality disorder, you might have spouses, and you've emailed in actually and told me, or even commented below, that you have spouses who are like this. You have borderline, you have narcissism, you have something, and you're recovering, but you still get triggered, and you have a spouse that is just really nice. And part of the reason why they can be nice is because they see your behavior for what it is. They don't take it personally. So is Corey like that? I don't know. But it is an interesting question to think about, and it is a mystery, as you put it. Yo. Laura says, your daily videos are a reminder to be patient and compassionate. Thanks, Dr. Kirk and the Podwife. Well, you're welcome. Thank you so much. Mari says, is a spouse supposed to know everything about you? Growing up, my mother always said, your husband doesn't need to know everything. However, I know some people need to know every detail about their spouse. There's no supposed to. It's totally up to you. There are different styles, and it's something to, work out before you engage in a long-term relationship with someone. If you want to have boundaries with your spouse, that's totally fine. But you have to find a spouse that's cool with that, because not every spouse is cool with that. Like with Biniam and Ariella, Biniam seems to be of the sort where he wants to have boundaries, and Ariella doesn't. And that's an incompatibility that is challenging to them. It doesn't mean it can't work, but it's something that is difficult for them to work on. Jenny and Summit, listener Isaac actually emailed in and said, for many South Asian families at home and even in the diaspora, we are still pressured to marry within our own subgroup. That means not just someone from India, but specifically Gujarati, Punjabi, etc. They have to be the same religion, they have to be the same sect of religion, and believe it or not, they have to be the same caste, which is like a class, like as in classism. It's still a huge deal in India, and posted in your bio in the matrimonial websites, meaning that your caste. So just imagine that, like when you're on Tinder, you actually have a little line that says, what strata you live in the society. It's so interesting. Any mixing between the castes or religions can provoke wild backlash in the family and the whole community to the point where it becomes dangerous and tears families apart. Yeah, Isaac, thanks for saying that. It's interesting detail. And, I don't know what to think about it. On one hand, from Seattle culture, I'm like, no, like people should be able to marry who they want to marry. And if that's your only complaint, like your son is marrying someone from a different caste or a different religion, if that's and everything else is fine, then there's something wrong with you, according to my culture. But according to Indian culture, it's totally normal. So on one hand, I look at that and I'm like, well, I have a lot of questions. Sometimes as I investigate these sorts of things, I find like, oh, I can kind of get it. Like with Indian culture and other cultures that are, not like the United States, which most cultures are not like the United States, they value collectivism and harmony within society because there's so many people living on top of each other for so many centuries that unless you just have this kind of arbitrary, you must conform rule, if people start to allow themselves to be individuals, even if at first it's not a problem, it can become a problem if enough people start thinking independently, where you might have crimes or you might have political instability, this kind of thing. And so, it's looked at one way. If you somehow, let's just, hypothetically, you took like 1 million people in one city and you put a big dome over it, and you said, everyone is going to be the same religion, everyone is going to be the same political party, everyone is going to think the same, everyone is going to have the same values, everyone is going to eat the same thing. If somehow you could, do that to 1 million people inside of a dome, there wouldn't be a lot of conflict, right? Now, it's an interesting question because maybe there would be, maybe we just find something else to fight about. But you could imagine that there would be less conflict, And so where's the balance there? On one hand, conformity at least is seen to reduce conflict and wars and violence and crime and, all sorts of problems. That at least it's perceived that way. And you could see that being maybe even partially true. So on one hand, conformity provides a lot of good things. Individuality brings a lot of bad things. But individuality brings a lot of good things. And conformity brings a lot of bad things. So, you could see a society going like, well, which one do we do? And it seems that a lot of societies, and I think particularly societies where people are on top of each other, like there's a lot of population density, conformity is chosen over individuality. So as a person who comes from perhaps one of the most individualistic cultures that's ever existed in the history of this planet, in that, Seattle is particularly individualistic, I think, that when I watch this show with Jenny Sum, I'm just like amazed. I'm just aghast. Like, how do you see the world that way? So on one hand, I have to go, well, there's another way to see the world. On the other hand, it is possible that, there's something that could be adjusted in Indian culture, that you don't have to give up all harmony. You can give a little bit of individuality to people, a little bit of choice. And at the same time, so you're dialing back the conformity a little bit and the harmony a little bit, but you don't have to get rid of all of it, and you don't. So you can allow a little bit of individualism, a little bit of personal choice, like Jenny and Summit being married. And so, yeah, I don't know what to think about it. Anyway, Mrs. G says, my grandmother was from India and reminds me a lot of Summit's mother. Not to bash on my heritage by any means, but I do wonder if it is more of a cultural thing to be so concerned about appearances and what other people think. My mother was never good enough for my father in my grandmother's eyes, despite 40 years of happy marriage. That's, it's upsetting. Catherine says, Summit's mom reminds me so much of my mother. Do you think that do you think what she's doing to Jenny is verbal sadism? She definitely derives pleasure from verbally accosting Jenny and seems to be trying to inflict emotional pain. Yeah. So verbal sadism is just, a sadistic thing. Some people have sadistic personality disorder, meaning that they gain pleasure by harming other people and will, often act out on that. And we'll often call these people sociopaths, but sadism isn't necessarily a part of sociopathy or psychopathy. Sadism is really quite particular. And that's, when she's smiling, it's who knows? It's impossible for us to tell. But there is a thing called sadism, and it can manifest verbally. And, it's possible. Somehow I doubt it, but because it's a pretty rare condition, but it's possible. Sumya says, as an Indian, I don't think they are talking about race when they say people will make fun of her. If Jenny were younger, then I believe it would have been a matter of pride for the parents to have a white daughter-in-law. But here they are mostly talking about the age difference. Okay, interesting. Right, so I was wondering, it's like, are they talking about race? Is this a race problem? But Samya is saying, no, if Jenny was Summit's age, they might even be proud of the fact that they have a white daughter-in-law. Vani says, as an Indian who has experienced this, here's some cultural context. Indian society is largely collectivist and places a significant value on groups and undermines individualism. Conformity is rewarded, while any contrarian beliefs are shunned and or ridiculed. The concept of respecting boundaries is more or less non-existent. A sense of self is accomplished through external societal validation. Therefore, how one is perceived in society supersedes most other things. Elders and parents are put on a pedestal and must be obeyed unquestioningly. Parents of healthy, differentiated adult individuals are often mocked for not having raised totally enmeshed, subservient children. Parents often have children not because they wish to experience parenthood, but because the child will be their insurance for old age. In this regard, sons are preferred over daughters, as patriarchy dictates that the daughter will move in with her husband and his parents and take on the role of caretaker for her in-laws. Also, she's expected to bring a hefty dowry as she makes this transition. All in all, lots of healthy and toxic behaviors are perpetuated in the name of culture and tradition. Goes without saying that expectations to this obviously exist in India. In Summit's mother's case, it seems she's worried about how she will be shamed by family and friends. That's interesting. Good details there. Yeah, it's like we have to imagine that the mom is operating, Summit's mom is operating from the societal standard. And if the society is the way that people are describing it and the way that Summit's family is describing it, they're under tremendous pressure to get rid of Jenny. It's not just emerging from the preference of the mother, right? All right, actually took a break there for a second because the pod wife went and picked up some Mexican food, some nachos and enchiladas, and we ate food, and then we watched an episode of The Americans, which I love, where I'm rewatching it for the third time. She's rewatching The Americans for the second time. So I'm back, picking up where I left off. Enoya, who were we talking about? Jenny and Summit. Enoya says, and this is why I don't think everything that a person does should be shielded as culture. The things that are abusive should be exposed and labeled as such in order to end them. Yeah, as I was saying earlier, there's a pretty fine, or when I look at the way Summit's parents treat Jenny, I will label it as unfair. Even as a therapist, I'll be like, no, you can't do that. Like, he is a grown man. He can marry who he wants to. There's nothing wrong with this marriage. Like, stop doing that. And so there's that. And even when I hear about Indian culture, I'm like, well, but okay, I hear that that's the norm, but that doesn't feel okay to me. Okay. So, but on the other hand, how do I know I'm not just being an ugly American and colonializing, through my own expertise? I'm using my power as a professor and a therapist and a podcaster to say I'm right, because it feels right to me to say that Jenny is being treated unfairly. I don't know. Or are we just observing that in Indian culture, they have a lot of pros and cons in their culture? And one of the cons is what we're seeing. Because we can certainly look at American culture and see that there are pros and cons. There are good things about our culture and bad things about our culture. And just because it's American culture doesn't mean that it's all good. In the same way that when we look at Indian culture, just because it's culturally Indian does not mean that it's all good. But how do we know? How do we distinguish actual unfairness from something that just isn't familiar to me? I can't really tell. I'm hearing from some people who are from that culture, from India, who are saying they don't like it. But let me know what you think, because it's such a dominant thing apparently in India, and there's so many aspects to it, and apparently everyone agrees, except for what I'm hearing from some of y'all are saying, like, well, some of the young people are kind of breaking free. But you could make an argument that they're not just progressing to a better place, they're just becoming maybe more westernized or something, which isn't necessarily a good thing, right? So I don't know. But I think I'm comfortable saying that if Jenny and Summit want to get married, and the parents did, a lot to try to get Summit to conform to society's norms, but Summit over the past, 8+ years is holding fast and saying, no, I love Jenny, then I'm comfortable in saying that parents morally should adjust in the same way that Kenny and Armando's parents are of Mexican culture, particularly rural Mexican culture, in that they are homophobic or sad that their son is gay. It's of the culture. Does it make it okay? No, it doesn't make it okay. Anyway, so I think I'm comfortable in saying that. I think the dad is actually more flexible. I think he is able to say, well, this doesn't look good. And yeah, we're going to have to deal with a lot of crap from our society, family, and friends, and people are going to look down on us. But, I love my son, and so what are you going to do? And Jenny seems nice enough, and this is kind of a disappointment, but, I'll welcome her in the family. I think the dad straddles that line. The mom, I think, has other reasons as to why she is so rigid on the cultural conforming. Like, I would imagine, I would actually love to talk to Summit's brother's wife and hear from her, because she, I think, follows the fact that Summit's brother married that woman is following the cultural norm. I think I can't know that for sure, but if that's true, I'm guessing that wife has things to say about her mother-in-law that are interesting for us to hear. That the mom is maybe particularly critical, or, I don't know. Anyway, Zulala says, that reminds me of this one time when my ex's mom told me that my hair was ugly. This reminds me, Summit's mom reminds me of the time when my ex's mom told me that my hair was ugly. So I looked at her, smiled, and said, I hate your hair too. It looks like a sheep died on top of your head and was then lacquered into place. Danielle and Muhammed video that I posted last week. Nicole says, I think it is likely he never loved her in a romantic way. Yeah, I'm interested in your opinion on that, because it certainly looks that way. None of us know what was in Muhammad's heart. But he basically even said as much, right? That he wasn't into her and was willing to give it a try, kind of a thing, but, as he was coming to the States. Tia says, I feel like I'm in the minority, but I do not see Muhammad as a con artist. I believe he came here for a better life. There's nothing wrong with that. I think he intended to try. However, Danielle lied about a lot of things. She has serious financial issues. Yeah, I think it's a matter of, opinion, obviously, that is, did Muhammad intend on trying to make it work with Danielle before he came over? Or did he know from the beginning that he was just going to play her for a green card? We'll never know unless Muhammad somehow admits that he is a con artist. Then we could probably take a guess and say that that's true, which he probably will never do either way. So it's hard to know, and it's a huge question. It's an interesting question, I think, given that that storyline is interesting. Before Muhammad came to the States, before, as the season is beginning, how much I think we can take a guess and say that he wasn't super in love with her. Let's just put it that way. Julia and Brandon seemed very much in love with each other before the season began. Mike and Natalie seemed very much in love with each other. Jeffrey and Varya seemed very much in love with each other before the season started. There are people where it just seems like, they're acting and talking and looking like a couple that is having those feelings that you have in the beginning of the relationship. Muhammad didn't seem to have any of that. Doesn't mean it didn't exist, but it just didn't seem to be there. But was he thinking, well, I could see it working. We've had a lot of great conversations. We have a lot in common. I could see this working, maybe I'll never be in love with her the way I was with someone from my past and, past, but I think we can make it work. She's a nice person. I'm a nice person. I think we can absolutely make it. Was he like that? Or was he like, I don't think this is going to work, but she likes me and she's easily manipulatable. So, let's make this thing happen. I don't know. It's hard to tell. And I think there's evidence on both sides, honestly. Kayla says, so I am on the psychopathy spectrum, and everything you said about psychopathy is true. I think you definitely can learn to at least kind of understand empathy and emotions, but it takes a lot of work, at least for me. Yeah, well, good for you, Kayla, that you can admit that you are on the psychopathy spectrum. And the way the internet talks about psychopathy and psychopaths is that they're all terrible people and they're all murderers and all this stuff, and it's just not true. The vast majority of people who are sociopaths or psychopaths or suffer from antisocial personality disorder are not murderers. And the difference about them mainly is that they don't have a natural empathy for other people. Like when I watch a fail video, particularly the older I get, and I see someone crash on a bicycle, I feel, I feel this pain because I'm empathizing with them. When my wife is tense or upset about something, it alarms me. I'm like, oh no, what's going on? I have a jolt of emotion myself. Psychopaths generally don't have that. They generally don't have the same reactive, and by extension, if I hurt someone's feelings, if I insult someone on accident or even on purpose, and I see hurt on their face or, they're upset, then I feel really bad. I'm, oh no, I hurt their feelings. Psychopaths don't have that. They don't care. Now, the fact that it's not that they don't care. That's because that sounds like it's a choice. They don't have the physiology or the neurology where those kinds of events are like lightning bolts to the soul. It just doesn't register because of the way that they were born or the way that they were raised, or they had traumas that changed that normal brain function. Because it's a very helpful brain function for us to feel other people's feelings, So for psychopaths, they don't have that. Now, sometimes what that will lead to is criminal behavior because they don't really register the pain in other people or the fact that they're harming other people. And so they just take and steal and lie and con. But it's very dysfunctional because it never works out, because other people will react badly to them. There's this notion in society that psychopaths are like, ha ha ha, look at me. And certainly there are those people, but the vast majority of people who suffer from psychopathy, it's a curse to have psychopathy. It's not fun. And often, one of the reasons why we like mob movies and TV shows like The Sopranos or something is because we would all like to be psychopaths sometimes, where we just don't care and where we get revenge on people that we want to get revenge on. It's this primal urge that we all have, or at least a lot of us have. And so for psychopaths, so when we watch these mom movies, it seems so glamorized, like, oh, wouldn't that be great to not care about other people's feelings? It's a deficit. What it means is that you're different from other people, such that you don't understand how other people react. You're like, why are you so upset at me right now? How did this happen? Because for the psychopath, there was a number of things that they did to someone else, and it was continually hurting the other person's feelings. And then all of a sudden the other person explodes, and they're just like, what's happening right now? And what can happen is, if you rinse and repeat that over time, the individual could become more isolated. Psychopaths, arguably, in my experience, need attachment as well. They like attachment. Even like Ted Bundy seemed to want close attachment, even though he was obviously a psychopath and a sexual sadist. And that's also another thing, I was talking about earlier. If you have psychopathy and sadism, then that's a recipe for disaster, right? Because you don't have empathy and you want to harm others. If you have sadism and not psychopathy, you want to harm others, but you also feel bad when you hurt other people. If you have psychopathy, you don't necessarily want to hurt other people. You just often do because you don't register other people's emotions. And again, if you're like this from day one, or you develop this at, age 5 to 10, then you're going to have a lot of really strained relationships, and that might push you into criminal activity, or push you into an attitude of, screw it, I hate people, I'm just going to hurt them all, that kind of thing. Or I'm going to rise this corporate ladder and I'll rule over everybody, that kind of thing. So psychopathy is something that is vastly misunderstood. But Kayla is saying what I was saying about psychopathy is true, and I was also saying that you can, because I have treated psychopaths, not to inherently have empathy, but to learn how to focus on, how to develop skills, sort of intellectual skills of empathy. Because, like I was saying earlier, the psychopath, it's very self-destructive to have psychopathy, because you're not relating to people in the way that they want to be related to. So psychopaths that I've worked with, I work with them on how to make up for the fact that they don't naturally pick up on other people's emotions, and it takes a lot of time. And Kayla is saying, you can definitely learn how to understand other people's emotions, but it takes a lot of work, at least for me, is what Kayla is saying. Anyway, so thank you, Kayla, for emailing in and or commenting. And if you want to email in, Kayla, at the website, give a little bit more detail. If you'd want to give me more, I'd be curious about that, and maybe how you were diagnosed, that sort of thing. Because it's not frequent that people will come forward and admit that they're a psychopath, because there's so much obvious stigma around it. All right. Well, at the end, I want to say that there's this new merch. It's like an ugly sweater. I have the army green. It comes in a lot of different colors. I've been wearing this shirt all the time. I love it. Gets me in the holiday spirit. You could, wear it to your next ugly sweater party, maybe. The podwife spent a lot of time on it. She's quite proud of it. I like it quite a bit. You can get it for your loved ones or other people, or you can get on a mug, maybe. I don't know. What else can I tell you? Is there anything else around me? Yeah. All right. Well, everyone out there, please take care of yourself. Until next time, because you deserve it. You really, really do.